Welcome to World Updates Hub. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. At the Sweetgrass, Montana border crossing, the air is thick with diesel and the sickly sweet stench of rotting tomatoes. Hundreds of refrigerated trucks idle in a miles-long convoy, engines humming as their cargo spoils in the sun. For days, drivers have been stranded, staring at the Canadian flags just out of reach. Jake Riley, a veteran trucker, leans against his rig, exhaustion etched on his face. "Jake, I've hauled everything but never seen anything like this. We're just stuck." The company says wait, the border guards say go home. But home is 1,000 miles and a lost paycheck away. Inside his trailer, 40,000 pounds of Roma tomatoes are turning to mush. Each hour, a financial disaster unfolding. Tension simmers. Arguments flare over CB radios. Rumors swirl. A new pest, political payback, no one knows for sure. The drivers share coffee, swap stories of missed birthdays and wonder what comes next. They are the first casualties in a trade war they never started, their livelihoods frozen by a decision made far away. The red line of tomatoes in their trailers mirrors the new red line on the map, a border now closed to U.S. tomatoes. This scene repeats at crossings from Washington to Maine. The cause? A sudden announcement from Ottawa, Canada, America's top agricultural trading partner, has banned U.S. tomatoes. The official reason, a health scare, a newly discovered pathogen. But here, surrounded by rotting cargo and anxious drivers, that explanation feels thin. It feels like something else, a war, with these truckers stranded on the front line. The border, once a gateway, is now a wall, and the cost is mounting by the hour. The supply chain is broken, and the consequences are immediate. For these drivers, the question isn't why, it's what now. The border is closed, the cargo is rotting, and hope is running out. This is the new reality for America's agricultural backbone. The red line has been drawn, and no one knows when or if it will be erased. The crisis has just begun, and the world is watching. In Florida's tomato fields, Maria Sanchez walks among heavy, ripe fruit. Her family's third-generation harvest with nowhere to go. "Maria, we just signed a contract with a Canadian grocery chain. Now it's worthless. The bank doesn't care about a trade dispute. The mortgage is still due. Farmers like Maria operate on razor-thin margins, relying on the Canadian market for survival." Tom Henderson in Ohio stands before a warehouse of unsellable tomatoes. "Tom, we've been told to destroy them. You pour your life into this soil, and now it's all worthless. It's not just money, it's pride. The uncertainty poisons every decision plant for next season. Take out another loan or walk away." "Maria, my son studied agricultural science to take over the farm. Now I'm telling him to look for another career. How can I ask him to inherit this instability?" For these families, the crisis is personal, a legacy at risk, a future in doubt. The ban isn't just an economic blow, it's a blow to identity and hope. Phone calls cancel orders. Conversations with workers end in layoffs. The fear is constant. Will decades of work vanish in weeks? The connection to the future is severed, leaving only a harvest of despair. This isn't a headline, it's a daily struggle. The crisis is reshaping lives, forcing impossible choices. The pain ripples through every farm, every family. The American farmer is left wondering who will stand with them. The border may be closed, but the wounds are wide open. The cost is more than financial, it's generational. The future of farming hangs in the balance. For many, this is the end of the line, and the silence in the fields is deafening. Ottawa's announcement was swift. A new strain of tomato apex blight, allegedly unique to U.S. soil, has closed the border to American tomatoes. Canadian officials cite food safety, displaying images of the blight and warning of a long ban. U.S. officials are blindsided. American scientists insist the blight isn't recognized, and their crops are clean. To them, this is protectionism disguised as public health. U.S. trade rep: "This is a non-tariff barrier, junk science to block competition." The timing is suspicious, coming just after failed trade talks over dairy and poultry. The tomato ban looks like retaliation, a message to Washington that Canada can inflict pain too. The health scare is the perfect cover, hard to challenge without seeming reckless. The dispute has moved from labs to negotiating rooms, but resolution is distant. For farmers and truckers, the debate is academic. The border is closed, the cargo is rotting, and livelihoods are hostage. Whether the blight is real or not, the impact is the same. The industry is paralyzed, caught in a high-stakes game of international chess. The science is murky, but the suffering is clear. This is more than a trade dispute, it's a battle for survival. The stakes are rising and trust is eroding on both sides. The future of cross-border agriculture hangs in the balance, and the clock is ticking. The shockwave from the tomato ban didn't stop at the farm gate. It hit Main Street in rural towns across America. Packing houses fell silent, local suppliers and diners lost business overnight. Frank Miller, packaging supplier, 70% of my business is tomato packers. When they stop, I stop. I've had to lay off half my staff. The domino effect is relentless. Jobs lost, businesses shuttered, communities shaken. The emotional toll is as deep as the financial one. High school games, church events, and local gatherings all feel the strain. The ban isn't just killing businesses, it's draining the lifeblood from these towns. The prosperity of a small town in Ohio now hinges on a policy in Ottawa. For these communities, the crisis is an existential threat, not a distant headline. The fabric of rural America is unraveling. The crisis quickly reached Canadian grocery aisles. Within a week, produce sections were barren. U.S. tomatoes gone, prices soaring. Sarah Jenkins, Toronto shopper, the prices triple. I have to choose between tomatoes and other essentials. It feels like a luxury now. The shortage forced families to make tough choices, and restaurants to rewrite menus. Canned tomatoes flew off shelves as shoppers stockpiled, fearing the shortage would last. The simple pleasure of a fresh tomato became a daily frustration. The crisis exposed Canada's reliance on cross-border food supply. The empty shelves were a stark lesson in the fragility of modern trade. For many, it was the first time they realized how global their food really is. The tomato crisis was no longer distant, it was a household problem. The trade war had come home, one meal at a time, and the anxiety was only growing. The tomato ban is accelerating the hollowing out of rural America. When a family farm fails, it's not just a business lost, it's a way of life erased. The local economy crumbles, schools face cuts, clinics struggle, Main Street empties. This isn't a downturn, it feels permanent. The loss of hope is palpable, replaced by resignation. The social consequences are devastating: despair, health problems, and a loss of identity. The American dream on the land feels like a cruel joke. The tomato ban has exposed the fragility of rural America. One policy decision has triggered a cascade of failures, threatening to extinguish the lights on Main Street for good. South of the border, a different story unfolds. As Canada bans U.S. tomatoes, Mexico steps in, securing a $12 billion deal and flooding Canadian shelves. Mexican agribusinesses, armed with high-tech greenhouses and AI-driven systems, outpace traditional U.S. farms. Their year-round efficient production leaves American growers behind. The Canadian ban, justified by a health scare, conveniently opens the door for Mexico's technological edge. Mexico is now a dominant force in North American food production. While American farmers plead for aid, Mexican companies expand and celebrate. One nation's crisis is another's golden opportunity. The rules of agricultural trade are being rewritten. The balance of power has shifted, and America is left watching from the sidelines. Washington's response has been slow and inadequate. Diplomatic protests and promises of aid ring hollow in the fields. Farmers face confusing paperwork, glacial bureaucracy, and aid packages that barely scratch the surface. Tom Henderson, a $50,000 loan isn't a lifeline, it's an insult. The disconnect between the crisis and the government's response is profound. Farmers feel abandoned, betrayed by leaders more interested in trade theory than real suffering. The crisis exposes a critical weakness in America's ability to protect its own. The promise to fight for rural America has been broken. Trust is eroding, and the rift is growing. The damage may last far beyond the tomato ban. The tomato crisis of 2025 is a blaring alarm for American food security. Dr. Elaine Carter, Hudson Institute. We're witnessing how a nation can lose control of its food supply. The ban shows how rivals can weaponize food safety to cripple U.S. agriculture and reshape trade. America's lagging investment in innovation has left it vulnerable. If U.S. farms can't compete, the nation will rely on imports, at the mercy of foreign governments and global tensions. Food independence is a strategic asset, as vital as military defense. The lesson is urgent: invest in research, support family farms, and defend against unfair trade. The health of rural communities is tied to national strength. Losing farmers means losing the ability to feed ourselves. The empty shelves and rotting harvests are a warning, not just a symptom. America must choose rebuild agricultural strength or become a dependent consumer. The next harvest is up to us. The future of American farming hangs in the balance.